Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a throwaway account in the True Off My Chest subreddit. The post is titled, "I can no longer handle my fiance's driving anxiety and I don't care if it makes me a bad person. I, 31M, am at my wit's end and I don't even care if it makes me a bad person. My fiance, 32M, has crippling driving anxiety. He can't drive at all. We live in a rural area of the province. There's no public transportation here. Not like in the city. No buses, no Ubers, no taxis. There's simply no way to get around if you can't drive. Because of his driving anxiety, my fiancé doesn't have a driver's license and doesn't know how to drive. He depends on other people to get him places, and I'm sick of it. We've argued about this so many times. He's never tried to overcome it, never gone to therapy, never even made an effort. He just flat out refuses. He used to depend on his parents to drive him, then his roommate, and now me. I'm exhausted from always being the one who has to drive or take him everywhere. He works from home full time, but anytime he needs to go somewhere, it's on me. When I was in the armed forces, my role was to drive all different types of vehicles. Now I'm an electrician, so I drive all over the province to people's homes and commercial sites for my job. I actually like driving, but my fiance thinks that just because I enjoy it, it's no problem that he doesn't drive. He won't learn, he won't go to therapy, and when he was still living at home, even his younger sister refused to get her license until she went to university because she didn't want to get stuck being his driver like their parents were. He even turned down a promotion, a better job, because it required going into the office part-time instead of being fully remote. I wish I hadn't let it get this far. It's been a sore point in our relationship for a long time. He refuses to see a therapist or take any steps to confront his fear. He won't even admit he has a problem. He's never been in an accident or lost any one-to-one, so I don't even know where this anxiety comes from. He's never once attempted to drive. Our last argument was because I refused to drive 4 hours one way and back by myself for a wedding we were both invited to. I said I'd only go if we could share the driving responsibilities. He thinks it's fine because I've driven longer distances before, but that's not the point. I don't even care if ending things with him over this makes me a bad person. I'm fucking done. Update. I broke up with my now ex-fiance. Before I ended things, I, 31M, tried one more time to get him, 32M, to understand that he needs to learn to drive, even if it means going to therapy to overcome his fear. He told me he didn't need to learn because I like driving, so it shouldn't be a problem for me to do all the driving. I almost lost it when he said that. I had to go into the other room to cool off. His reply made me realize it was a lost cause, so I ended things. He begged me to reconsider, but since he refused to even admit he has a problem, I was done. I moved out of our place at the beginning of November, and I'm much happier now. My ex-fiancé is back living with his parents. I found out that his younger sister was supposed to move back in temporarily, but she decided not to after their parents told her she'd have to be his driver. She chose to work in another province while applying for PhD programs instead of moving home, because she didn't want to be his 24/7 chauffeur. Honestly, I don't blame her. I was tired of it too. I appreciate all of the support I received on my last post. For the record, I've turned off direct messages after receiving a bunch of hateful ones calling me an idiot and worse. I'll also ignore anyone who does that in the comments, just like I did on my previous post. Fearless Speech said, "I like the sister. She recognized a pattern from childhood and made self-preservation decisions based on what she observed. She's an assertive person with self-respect and no time for peer pressure." Situation said, "I usually drive, but if I were always the designated driver and constant chauffeur, I'd be really frustrated too. My husband doesn't love driving, but he works from home and only goes out about 3 times a week, usually to eat out with me, but he's capable of driving to the doctor or handling an emergency kid pickup. The fiancé here sounds entitled, not scared." This next story was made in the What Do I Do subreddit by a user named New Brick. The post is titled, "I want to buy a house with my own money, but GF says no. I, 29M, have been dating my girlfriend, 25F, for a little over a year. I don't live with her. She doesn't work because she doesn't want to and relies on her parents. Things are mostly fine, but we've hit a big disagreement that I can't seem to shake. I've been saving aggressively for a while, and I'm finally in a position where I can buy a small house or townhouse on my own. The down payment would be entirely mine, the mortgage would be in my name, and I'd be fully responsible for all the costs. When I told my girlfriend, she immediately shut the idea down. She said it's a huge life decision that affects both of us and that I shouldn't do it unless we're married or buying together. She also said it would make her feel like she has no say in our future and that it puts pressure on her to move in under my terms. From my perspective, I'm not asking her to pay anything, and I'm not forcing her to move in. I see this as a smart financial move and something I've worked hard for. I don't want to keep renting just because I'm in a relationship that may or may not last forever. I also don't like the idea of delaying my goals waiting for someday. Now this has turned into repeated arguments. She says I'm being selfish and acting single, while I feel like she's trying to control what I do with my own money. I get that it affects the relationship in some way, but I don't think that means I need her permission to buy property I can afford. What should I do? Update. I spent a long time reading through the responses and honestly just got overwhelmed. At some point, it hit me that this isn't just about a house. This is a much deeper issue than I wanted to admit. I didn't sleep at all last night. I kept replaying everything and realizing how foolish I've been in this relationship. Around the middle of the night, I had a full panic attack and ended up driving to my parents' house. I woke them up and told them everything. They didn't even know most of this was happening. They've always seen me as independent and assumed I had things under control. Clearly, I didn't. I had to face some hard truths about myself. I don't really have friends. I was naive, depressed, and had low self-esteem. I met the first woman at a local bar who showed me affection, and I clung to that, thinking that was just how relationships worked. Deep down, I realize now that the reason I was so unsure about everything was her lack of ambition and drive. And I hate admitting this, but I'm also at fault. I tolerated it. I spent money I shouldn't have. I indirectly encouraged a behavior I wasn't okay with. A lot of you basically gave me the wake-up call I needed. I've never really dated before. I kept my head down, got my computer science degree, landed a high-paying job, and just kept grinding. The cost of that was my social skills and emotional awareness. That pain built up quietly, and whenever it surfaced, my go-to solution was calling her over to make it temporarily go away. Obviously, that's not a long-term solution. I tried therapy before, but I didn't feel comfortable with my therapist and ended up quitting. After last night, I realized I need to try again, with someone else. I called her late this morning and asked her to come to my apartment tomorrow. Actually, meeting somewhere public like a park might be better, so I'll change that plan. I'm going to break up with her tomorrow. I needed today to calm down, collect my thoughts, and stop spiraling. I'm still moving forward with buying my house soon. This whole thing hurts, but for the first time, I feel like I'm choosing myself instead of avoiding discomfort. User Turuel said, "It's insane to me with the way the world is headed that anyone wouldn't leap for joy at the thought of someone they love managing to buy a home, especially considering his age. I was reading about it the other day. The average age of a first-time homeowner is now in their 40s, I believe. I agree with the commenter who suggested that she was upset because she would have no claim to it. I'm glad he's had a breakthrough though. Let's remain hopeful that OP's spine stays just as strong when he finally confronts her to end their relationship." Vegas by way of LA said, "I'm glad OP came to his senses and I really hope he changed the location of the breakup. It's a bad idea to have someone come to your house to end things. A public place is the safest option and provides the easiest exit." This final story was made in the Coworkers subreddit by a user named Stone of Forest. The post is titled, "Colleague stole my position and now I get to watch her struggle worse than I did. I'm a teacher at a decently affluent public school. For the most part, I love my job. I've made genuine friends among staff members and the students make all the hard work worth it. There are, of course, the typical downsides of teaching you always hear about, low pay, grading during off hours, and so on, but overall, the deal has been good. A few years back, I was recognized by my former boss as a potential leader in the building. He emphasized that I was very data-oriented and well-liked among my colleagues. I'm comfortable with Google Sheets and Excel when it comes to collecting and organizing student data, and I'm solid with parent communication. I was hesitant at first, but eventually I agreed to take on a leadership role for a group of teachers and students at the school. I became responsible for organizing meetings and overseeing general student success. Not long after, that boss left, and I ended up with a new boss I didn't know well. Here's where things get messy. I have sensory processing disorder and mild hearing loss. It's hard to describe, but sometimes I genuinely don't hear things correctly. For example, if you said, "I'm going to pick up Stacy," I might hear something like, "I'm gone, just wait and see." This happens at least once a day, but usually it's not that big of a deal. It's not curable, but I manage it. During meetings with my new boss, she often pushed strategies focused on students whose state test scores were just below passing. The idea was that we'd provide extra attention to those students while still supporting everyone, though I later learned the legality of that approach was questionable at best. These initiatives were never written down, likely for that reason. Whenever these ideas were shared, I would often ask my boss afterwards to repeat herself and double-check my notes to ensure I understood correctly. I noticed at the time that she was quietly frustrated by this, even though I had explained my hearing issue. Looking back, I wonder if she already felt uneasy about those gray area strategies and if my questions made her uncomfortable or gave her a bad impression of me. Now, to introduce the main character of this story, Tenny, a nickname since she's the coach of the tennis team. Tenny is well liked among staff for her years of service and dedication to our community. I liked her too and thought she'd make a great teammate. However, like my boss, Tenny became increasingly frustrated when I would miss things she said to me, especially in noisy high school hallways. Sometimes she'd shout something to me as she walked by, which often led to misunderstandings and mistakes. I repeatedly asked her to stop and make sure I heard her correctly, or just to send me an email, but nothing changed. There were at least 5 or 6 major instances where my hearing wasn't accommodated, situations that could have been easily avoided with a simple email. For example, my new boss once came into the hallway to let us know that the assembly location had been changed. We were supposed to take the students to a new area instead of the old one. I heard that there was a change but didn't catch the new location. Tenny was the only one nearby. I tapped my ear, which I usually do to indicate that I didn't hear something, and asked where we were going. Tenny quickly responded and walked away. And once again, I didn't catch what she said. Cue me and my students walking into the assembly 5 minutes late after circling the building in confusion. When my boss asked what happened, I told her simply that I hadn't heard her correctly. A few weeks later, I was called into a meeting with my boss. She informed me that I was being removed from my leadership position due to inconsistency and disrespect toward colleagues. I asked which colleagues, and she said that was private. I asked how I had been disrespectful, and she said, "Sometimes you get frustrated when you say you can't hear things and tap your ear." I explained that tapping my ear is the ASL sign for hear, as in I can't hear you. She said I should have communicated that more clearly. I told her that I had repeatedly asked for written communication instead. She said I shouldn't always expect that. I realized it was a losing battle. I love the school and the community, but fighting my new boss would only lead to more problems. So I wasn't surprised when a school-wide email announced that Tenny would be taking over my leadership position. She was showered with praise in the replies, which was frustrating to say the least. I knew she was the one who had complained, and it was bitter to watch her be rewarded for it. Fast forward to the next school year. Tenny came into my room and asked for the student data sheets I had built in Google Sheets. I told her truthfully that even if I shared them, she wouldn't be able to use them properly. I pulled her over to my computer and showed her the formulas I built and explained how I had to adjust them every time a new student, section, or course was added to the roster. She then asked if I could continue updating the sheets even though I was no longer a leader. I told her as professionally as possible that I'd be happy to teach her how to do everything, but I would need a stipend for any additional work. She asked if the other leaders had to do what I did. I told her they didn't. I was the only one who ever did it. I'm a little ashamed to admit it, but I took quiet satisfaction in seeing Tenny's face go cold when she realized I wasn't going to fold, and that her only options were to put in hours of tedious data work every year or learn to use Sheets and Excel on her own. I knew she wasn't going to do either. And the real kicker, the parents. Parents of students are 99% of the time an absolute joy to work with. I really mean that. It's so rewarding to collaborate with the parents of the kids I care most about. But it's that remaining 1% who can make your life a living hell. I've overheard Tenny complaining about being on the phone with one of those 1% parents for 45 minutes, losing her entire grading period in the process. A call like that would have taken me about 5 minutes tops, since I've learned how to stop circular arguments and get the parent on my side quickly. What takes me minutes takes Tenny hours. Yes, she's getting my $1,500 stipend now, but I no longer have to deal with extra meetings, endless parent phone calls, or constant miscommunication. She's getting all the pain I once did, and then some. I feel a little ashamed that I'm taking so much satisfaction in this, but honestly, Tenny made my life hell in a place I otherwise love. Have fun, Tenny. Update. It's been a full semester of school, so I figured it was time for an update. To say that things have been going well for me would be an understatement. As several commenters pointed out in my original post, my $1,500 a year stipend was not worth it. The mental load that lifted when I stepped away from the leadership position was enormous. I feel so much lighter now, and I've been able to use the time and energy I regained to focus on community projects. I just feel like I'm a better teacher overall. I haven't taken work home once this semester. On the other hand, Tenny has been miserable. She's always one of the last teachers to leave, even during her coaching off-season, and she frequently cancels or forgets meetings. Unsurprisingly, Tenny still hasn't been considerate of my hearing accommodation, which is now officially registered with the district. I keep my own meeting notes and show them to a trusted colleague afterwards to make sure I heard everything correctly. I usually miss one or two things, but at least I can correct them now. Recently, to my surprise, my boss held a staff-wide meeting and introduced a shared meeting document and calendar system for all teams to use. Tenny looked visibly frustrated, but this is literally the same system I used when I was a leader, and it's just standard professional practice in most workplaces. A trusted colleague later told me that Tenny and two other teachers were the ones who complained to my boss about my lack of preparation and inconsistencies. Since then, I've only spoken to those two when necessary, but I'm perfectly friendly and pretend I don't know they threw me under the bus. One of them I'll call Ben. I didn't mention this in my original post, but Tenny teaches the same middle school subject I do, English. So does Ben. Anyone familiar with education knows English is one of the heaviest tested subjects. Our school, like many others in the US, lives and dies by state test scores, so we put in a ton of effort to make sure students perform as well as possible. Because I've had more time and energy, I decided to double down on my instruction. I researched new strategies, applied evidence-based tactics, and worked hard to help my students reach their potential. The payoff came during an all-staff meeting when my boss announced that our entire grade level had scored higher in English than in previous years. The initial data showed a 20% increase from last year, an incredible improvement. Then my boss said something that made the room go silent for just a second. Be sure to check your students' individual scores to see how you contributed to the increase. Folks, my students were the reason for the bump. Tenny's and Ben's scores were slightly lower than the previous years. My boss congratulated me privately, and my job review this cycle was the best I've ever had. Ironically, my boss later asked if I could share some of my strategies with Tenny and Ben. I said of course I would, it's common in teaching to share materials, but I only shared my documents and nothing more. Tenny and Ben haven't approached me for help since, and I'm perfectly fine with that. My favorite part, due to budget cuts, the leadership position is being eliminated next school year and our teams are being dissolved. Tenny went through all that drama for one single year. I'm trying not to revel in the news and instead stay focused on my growth and the 95% of my colleagues who genuinely enjoy working with me. My students are happier. I'm happier. I'm just keeping my eyes on the positive and leaving the rest behind. Thanks to everyone for your kindness and support. And to anyone with a disability, get it in writing with your district so you don't go through the kind of pain I did. Seriously. Lost and Dumbfound said, Tenny is an ass, but that boss is setting a terrible example by showing it's acceptable to act like one. What do you mean OP should have communicated the hearing issue earlier? They're communicating it now. It's your job to address it, not to have a bad attitude and do nothing. Glitter Doomsday said, of course the boss congratulated her privately and immediately followed it up by asking her to guide her favorite teachers on how to do better.